everyone. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining our We Stutter at Work June webinar. This is a first for us, and I'm really thrilled to be moderating and being a panelist for this topic that's really near and dear to me. We're going to be talking about Pride Month and being your genuine self at work. And before we jump into the webinar content, I just wanted to give you a little bit more background about the We Stutter at Work program, the National Stuttering Association. I've been on the board for the last 4 years now, and we're all people who stutter, and we're also very passionate about helping people achieve their career success. We do practice online interviews, webinars like these. We have career profiles of people who stutter, and we aim to educate employers. If you're curious about any resources that we have, feel free to check out our website below. And just some general housekeeping. So we want to make sure that we have a successful webinar. So just please, be respectful of us and our fellow attendees, and we want to make sure that everybody has the best experience possible. So please ensure that you're on mute. I'll try not to be guilty of that myself during this presentation. For questions and comments, please use the chat function. Members of the board will be moderating our chat, and we will let you know when the recording is available. So our webinar hosts, Ariel, unfortunately, can't be here. She's in Maryland, and there's a tornado warning there, which is pretty scary. So she won't be able to make it. It'll just be me tonight. And like I said before, I'm a person who stutters. I'm gay. I just got married last September, and I've been openly gay for about 8 years now. Me being open at work, and professionally about my stutter and sexuality is relatively, a new experience for me. And me even being here moderating this webinar is a big deal. So, but yeah, I'll save that for later. A little bit about me professionally. I work at Scientific American magazine as the director of marketing. And I've been in publishing media field for about 10 years now. And I've been involved with the NSA for the last 10 years, attending local chapter meetings, and more recently have been involved with the We Stutter at Work program. But more importantly than me, we have some really great panelists lined up for tonight. We have Darcy, Corey, and Sarah. I'm gonna ask each of our panelists just to give a quick intro so the audience can get to know you better. Do you want to kick it off, Darcy?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Darcy Gillane. I've been out for about 35 years, like very publicly out. I'm a lesbian, married for many years too, and a parent. For many years, I worked in corporate, corporate America. I worked for one of the big test prep companies. And I was a teacher, and I was a writer, and I was a content manager. Also have a law degree that I don't use. I got laid off right as I was becoming a parent. So I was a stay-at-home parent for a number of years. And for the last couple of years, I have worked for a small company, small, like weird little niche company called CEO Connection, which basically um, the job is essentially an account manager where I sort of connect mid-market CEOs to other mid-market CEOs. I work from home and I work almost exclusively on Zoom these days when I'm with if I'm not working by myself. And I'll pass it on to the next person.
Great, thanks, Dorsey. Sarah, you want to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I am Sarah. I am a person who stutters as well as a lesbian. I've been out with my sexuality since uh, a decade ago now, maybe since I was 18. Um, and I've been out as a person who stutters not that long, I would say in the past 4 or so years. I've kind of gone gone involved with the stuttering community more and started to be out, I guess, as a person who stutters. What else? Oh, I work currently for a nonprofit that coordinates volunteering events all throughout the SF Bay Area. I've been doing that for about a year, but prior to that, I was working in the construction industry, doing project management stuff. What else? I am from the SF Bay Area. I currently live here, love it. And yeah, I'm excited to be here. So thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being here, Sarah. And it's just interesting how many parallels there are between, coming out with your sexuality versus coming out with your stutter. And it seems like a lot of us have similar stories where we might have come out with our sexuality earlier or later, or so I think this will be a really interesting conversation to compare and contrast all of our experiences. But let's pass it over to Corey.
Hi, um, hi everybody. My name is Corey. So just like Sarah, I'm also from the SF Bay Area, San Jose. Um, uh, as far as being out, I'm not sure like how long I've been out. I have joined the um, I did join the NSA about a bit over 12 years ago, and yeah, and I think around that same time I started being more comfortable with myself, in all um with more aspects of myself. Let's see, for my job, I'm currently an associate editor for the Villages Golf and Country Club. I went to school for journalism, and so I was a reporter for a few years, then became editor, and then during COVID, I kind of went back to school for UX design. Yeah, so I've been trying to transition into that field. I am currently the co-chapter leader of the San Jose chapter of the NSA. Thank you.
Corey, just a shout out for the editorial and UX design. Those are some of my favorite colleagues at work. And I'm also super passionate about journalism, so Yeah, kudos to you. Yeah, so I'm really thrilled to have you all here. And I'm very excited to dive into all of our experiences. So we can move on to the content segment of this. And this is going to be pretty informal. We don't have to stay to a certain structure or anything, but some of the general points that we're going to talk about, right, is how we disclose our stuttering and or sexual orientation at work. What are our unique perspectives and how they can be advantageous um, in the workplace? What are the parallels between both of these communities? And how allies can best show us support. I can kick it off on the first point. So disclosing in general at work. I've got an interesting story. So I've worked for the same company for about 6 years, but I left my current company to work for another company. And what was interesting about that experience for me is that for some reason I felt so much freer to, like, as soon as I started that job, right, because I was meeting new people, as soon as I spoke to every single new colleague, I was open about my sexuality, and not really coming out, but just saying, hey, I'm getting married to to a man, so not like formally coming out, but just you know informally mentioning it. And then also, I was really open with the work I do uh, for the NSA, and that experience was freeing because it was just it was nice to start off relationships being 100% who I am versus sort of hiding those two really important aspects of my personality. And what's an interesting contrast to that experience is my company now. I went back to the company. I've been back with the same team for about 2 years now, and I still feel a little bit, I don't want to say fearful, but a little bit hesitant to share everything. And I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's because when I first built those relationships, I was very, insecure and not really accepting of like who I was, and if those feelings are still going on. The only the only thing I've done in terms of disclosing at work has been with new employees. So if a new employee joins and I have like an intro meeting with them, I immediately talk about my husband, and I talk about these stuttering community. But then the people that I've known for years, I feel like I'm a little bit nervous sharing everything about myself, even though I'm sure they probably have figured out that I have a stutter in 6 years. So it's just, it's kind of like a, for lack of better words, like a weird experience. I don't know if any of you have had similar parallels to that, or what your experience has been.
Yeah, Chris, I actually have a similar experience with that. Um, so in the past 5 years since I graduated college, I've had 3 different jobs, and I would say at the first job, I definitely did not disclose either one of my identities. And it wasn't until I think I got to the second job where I was meeting new people and probably didn't like care as much. And I think at that point is when I started to really just be like, yeah, hey, I have a girlfriend. I am a person who stutters. And I think that helped me a lot, just being able to start fresh in a way. And also being in the construction industry, there's definitely not a lot of queer people in general, and not a lot of diversity, period. So I think that was really hard for me. And then now I'm working for a nonprofit where I would say more than half of us are queer, which is really nice. And everyone is very understanding and accepting of my stutter. So it's definitely interesting to have like those 3 different experiences of being a person who stutters and a person who's queer. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing, Sarah. And it's almost like that saying that some people share, like, when you when you start college, right? It's like you could be who you truly are. I guess it's the same parallel to when you start a new job, when you're more, when you're more open about yourself, and you could just, start off fresh and put it all on the table. Um, I'm curious, how about from your end, Corey? What is your experience been disclosing, and have you felt that different jobs you have, different experiences in?
Sure. So, okay, so for my former career as a journalist, I felt that my stutter um um almost seemed sometimes like a hindrance, because um so among journalists you know um there's this stereotype that's also kind of true, that you kind of have to be a shark. You have to be very outgoing. You have to like get in there to get the to to get the interview done. Yeah, so for a while I was really trying to hide my stutter, just so that um yeah, um just so that it yeah, just so that I wouldn't seem like less uh of a journalist. Um, um, yeah, but it was stressing me out so much. I remember at at one point, when I was just starting out, there was this veteran reporter, like, who had heard me do an interview, and she heard me stutter so much. Yeah, she actually pulled me aside and gave me all these tips on how to stop being so nervous. Yeah, and so from then on, I felt that it was more. Yeah, I felt that, okay, like, I just really had to come out with it. Yeah, and just tell people that I stutter, that it's not making mean that it's not because I'm nervous, that it's not because, yeah, that it's not because I'm a lesser journalist, than other people. It's just how I speak. Yeah, but I'll be honest. My like my it was very hard. You have to uh be, be a journalist. Yeah, and so I was pretty glad, yeah, when I was able, to like to get a job elsewhere, and become an editor. Um, and my current job, which I've been with for about 10 years, I started as a temp. When I first started, yeah, uh, I did feel feel that tendency to be both closeted about my stutter and about my sexual orientation. But you know, it also kind of had to do with like with the place I work for. So I work for like for a senior community, like where most people working there, I mean, where most people living there are age 55 and up, yeah. So I was kind of, stereotyping people myself, but yeah, by thinking that people were not going to be as open-minded, yeah. So um yeah, so for first few years I was really trying to hide the fact that I stutter and that I was gay. But yeah, but I realized that I couldn't work like that forever. I mean, I couldn't avoid doing every presentation. I couldn't, yeah, so um yeah, so I started letting details slip out, yeah, and then well, like I'm not sure which one came first, for my sexuality. I started telling people, that I was doing that I was having plans, with a boyfriend, or or that I was looking forward to going to Pride, or or something like that. I mean, like very small, organic pieces of info. When it came to my stutter, I think that it was less organic. I mean, I just so I just basically came out with it, and and I just started telling people that I stutter, so that if they have any questions during a presentation, you know um I was willing to answer them. So it felt a lot more freeing, and and felt that I was able to do my job much better after I was more open.
And thank you so much for sharing, Corey. I'm curious, and I think you kind of answered my question, but do you feel like it was the career area itself, journalism versus UX and design, that you were able to feel freer, or do you think it was just more in terms of like your own personal experiences and that, that helped, like did you feel more comfortable because you were happier with the work you were doing, or you think it was just more about your own personal growth and experiences?
So it was kind of both, I think. So I think like there's like there is a stereotype that reporters have to have to be very on it, they have to be very aggressive, you know even one of my professors in college had like had told me, that even if I didn't feel outgoing, or or if I didn't feel aggressive, I would have to fake it. Fake it till you make it. Like that's what they say. So so for a while, I think I was really carrying all that baggage, in my head, and making it worse than that than it really was. I think in the real world, I think people are much more understanding and compassionate than we give them credit for.
Yeah, and that's 100% true. I think it goes back to that fear, right? Like that like societal norm that we're all kind of, like it's kind of hammered in our head, and being different is hard. It's hard to like accept being different and sort of, own being different. And in most situations, I think, and I know everybody doesn't have this experience, but I think, most most of the time we always perceive it being worse than it is in terms of like, how people feel about us and, how accepting, um, people will be. It's just that fear and that insecurity and that like societal thing. Like I still have, even though I've been out for about 8 years now, I'm married, so I'm, much more comfortable, obviously, than how I was about, 10 years ago and in college and whatever. But there's still this part of me that's, has that like old-fashioned societal norm in the back of my head, like, where I feel insecure in certain situations. Like even during my own wedding, like I had anxiety about the first dance and were people going to be pointing at us and or it's are the are the vows going to be scrutinized and like you have all of these fears and all of these insecurities. So really the reason why I'm sharing that is that I'm not 100% there. I'm better than how I was before, but I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that I'm 100% comfortable with my sexuality and stutter. I'm curious what how your experiences have been, Darcy. What do you think about everything that we've spoken about?
Um, no, I mean, it's always interesting to hear everybody's different experiences. I'm a little older than the rest of the people on the panel. So, I came out. I mean, I came out in the late '80s when it was, it was a big deal at the time. I was very out in college, and my first job out of college was for an LGBTQ not for profit. Um, so it was on my resume. It was on my resume from 1991 on. So having been very out in college and having had this very very gay job right out of college, I was just always out, and it was definitely an identity thing, and it was definitely how I understood myself and how I related to the world. And so I was just out in all subsequent jobs after that. Although I always felt so like I was never closeted at work ever, which is I always helped. I lived in major cities. I was in LA. I was in the Bay Area. I was in New Haven, and I'm in New York now. So I've always lived in places where it was fairly easy to be out. Um, and I never had any real problems with that. Although it was always easier, like after I got married and everything, just being able to talk about my life, being able to talk about my family, always felt more organic than talking specifically about being gay, because there was rarely a reason to. Um, but with stuttering, it's always sort of interesting. I have I've sort of always been willing to talk about my stutter, but I don't stutter openly that easily, except when I do, and then it's like I have a mild stutter, except when it's really severe, and I'm um, I have a lot of long-term ingrained avoidance behaviors, um, and so I would get into these situations at work in which people don't know that I stutter. I mean, I absolutely pass for fluent a lot of the time, and I talk about it, but people don't really believe me until suddenly I am completely disfluent, and then people don't quite know what to do because it's sort of unexpected. Um, and then I got involved with the NSA, and that's till I was like 40. So I mean, it was in 2010 was when I went to my first conference. And that was when I came to realize that even though I talked openly about stuttering, that I was effectively covert, because I had such a hard time stuttering openly. And I generally, um, like, I didn't care if people knew that I was a person who stuttered, but I just couldn't let myself stutter that openly. And I mean, people who know me have heard me talk about this before, that it was sort of a huge moment for me of realizing that I have like being out has always been such a part of my identity. Like I've been out on television, and like there've been, I've been like I was one of the visibly, gay people at a very big school at a time when there weren't that many, people who were that visibly out. And so it was definitely how I understood myself in the world. And then realizing that there's this other huge part of my identity, which is being a person who stutters, and that I wasn't out. And I've sort of spent the past 14, 15 years sort of wrestling with that and working on being more open. And I'm always so happy in professional or personal situations in which I feel this fluency coming on, and I just sort of lean into it and I don't fight it and I don't avoid it, because I think there's so much for me personally. I think there's so much value in being out and in not giving into the shame of it all, because that's something. And as a parent, which is really it's not the point of this webinar, but not wanting to model shame is sort of in sort of how I deal with the world is kind of a huge thing. In my current position, it's sort of weird. Um, I don't have a lot of direct interaction with the people I'm working with. I'm sending a lot of emails, but on the Zoom calls that I tend to be on, they're not about me. And so I'm in a more of a support position. And so my personal life, my identity, like anything about me almost never comes up. Um, so I don't quite know. I don't quite know how to be out about, and I'm almost never talking. I'm usually just sort of it's usually it's one-on-one calls between the CEO of my company and the CEOs that I work with, but I'm usually just like I'm writing plans and I'm taking notes and I'm not the one driving the calls. So I have no idea. Like there've been a handful of times maybe where there's been like a little bit of chit chat, so I've mentioned my family. Um, but it's just sort of it's sort of a weird situation to not be as out as I'm accustomed to being. And I'm not hiding anything. I'm just not. It's just never about me. Um, but to just give one quick anecdote, like I was on a call about a year ago, and the CEO who was in Georgia, and runs a nonprofit and is talking about this about having been on the plane of like his name is um, dropping in my head, but it's the CEO of Chick-fil-A. And can't Dan Cathy, I think it's his name. And she's, this was like a huge thing for her organization, like possibly, about getting money from him. And I'm sitting there thinking, holy, I don't want to, like, I want to say something about, oh, like, he's a terrible person. Don't do business with him. Don't take his money. And absolutely cannot say that under these circumstances. Like it would be about as inappropriate as, as it could be. Um, but um, I and I've never been in that kind of like never found myself in that situation before where I like, and again, I wasn't hiding that I was gay, but it would have been really inappropriate to say anything. And I've never sort of had to like swallow that before. And so it's a little bit of a different world for me right now in that respect.
First of all, I want to say kudos for being so open, during those times in college and just, really, it sounds like you've always owned who you are. So I really admire that and respect that. It's such an interesting difference, right? Is it seems like Darcy for you, not that you're actively hiding it, but it almost seems like you've owned your sexuality a little bit more over the years than you have your stutter. And then for me, I feel like it's the opposite way. I'm almost more comfortable being a person who stutters than a gay man. And I don't know if it's, because of my family background or I don't know how I've been, the experiences I've had. I have no idea what makes me more or less comfortable with either, either or, but it's like an interesting question. I don't know if I'm framing it the right way. Like, Sarah, do you have any opinion on that? Like, do you feel like you're more or less comfortable with either, part of yourself, or is it about the same? Is there a reason why one is more comfortable for you than the other?
That's a great question. Yeah, I would say I'm more comfortable with my sexuality than being a person who stutters. I mean, I kind of, not to given to stereotypes, but I feel like recently I am presenting more mask, and I have like short hair, and I'm doing construction stuff, and I feel like I'm a stereotypical lesbian, and I feel like people see that, and I feel privilege in that way, where I feel like I don't feel like I have to come out a lot of the time, because it's just kind of, people assume, which is nice, I guess. But prior to that, when I was presenting more femme, I felt like that was when I was less comfortable with myself, because I wasn't fully embracing who I was, and my more masculine energy. But I have definitely in the past few years really leaned into that, which has been really nice. And yeah, I hope I can be there soon, being a person, or with being a person who stutters. I feel like, because I have been holding it in for like so long since I was a kid, that I haven't fully quite gotten comfortable with that part of myself, but I'm hopeful that in time that will happen. Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure if I answered your question.
You did. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. And I just think all of our experiences are so different, and it's fascinating to me, like, what, I don't know, what side we're more or less comfortable with. What do you think, Corey, for you?
So for me, I think that I am, well, yeah, so I'm pretty sure that I am much more comfortable being out about being a person who, stutters, than a person who is gay. Yeah, so there are, there are, so there are several reasons for that. I think, first one is it's much like it's much harder for me to to kind of hide. I mean, not that I'm trying to hide. Being a person who stutters. I mean, it's just that as soon as people hear me speak, I mean, they can already tell that I'm a person who stutters. Whereas I mean, whereas it might not always be super obvious, that that I'm gay. I mean, like right from meeting me at first. Yeah, and I think it also has to do with um with how bullied I was growing up. Growing up um I was very bullied for my voice. So yes, it was a was was a two-pronged kind of thing. So on one hand, I was bullied for having a stutter, and then on the other hand, I was bullied for having the stereotypical gay voice. Yeah, and so I felt that yeah that that it was probably 2080, as far yeah, so like 20% bullying because my stutter, and then and 80% bullying regarding my voice, like not sounding like these, not sounding like the typical masculine, like macho bro, type of growing up. So I think that that really internalized in me that it was more safe being a person who stutters. I mean, because like I feel like it's less politically correct to make fun of person who stutters still than you know than it is to be than it is to make fun of person who is queer. I mean, like they're like they're yeah so I feel like there are people out there still like who would want to like harm you physically, like for being queer, whereas there's not that many people who would harm you for being a person who stutters, so I feel like that's really colored yes, that's really influenced how how out I've been. I mean, it's so it's really been so so it's really been influenced, by by my sense of self-preservation, I guess. I mean, so I just feel more safe being out as a person who stutters.
Yeah, thank you so much for opening up about your bullying experiences. I can identify with you on that, and I can also relate to you on the masculine versus feminine stereotypes and society, and being a gay male kind of contradicts what we're taught about masculinity. I think sometimes I've had similar experiences whereas I feel like when I was younger, I was more insecure about my stutter because it was the main reason why, people bullied me. So probably from like kindergarten until, I don't know, high school, just say like junior year of high school, I was so afraid to stutter that, I barely spoke. So I didn't really have many friends. I was very, very shy, very insecure. So I felt like, my perception was that I was bullied because I stuttered, not because I was gay. I wasn't openly gay. I didn't come out until I was like 20, 25, just say. So I was a little bit later. So I think my early childhood, right, young teen insecurity related to my stutter. And then once I got into high school and I realized, what was going on with my sexuality, then the insecurity shifted, and it was more about, oh my God, I'm gay, and what is, I've been taught about masculinity, and all these family values, and just all these things that society makes you feel like you have to be as a man. So I guess I'm still dealing with those insecurities now. And the other reason why I think in my case maybe I'm more comfortable with stuttering is because I've been so involved with the NSA for 10 years. And it's been a really great resource for me to connect with other people who stutter, and like I feel like being a part of this community has helped accelerate um my acceptance process. Like I haven't had speech therapy in years because I just think that, accepting yourself, being your genuine self, and just kind of, pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone with a stutter is the best thing. And in the last few years, I feel like, and I feel really lucky that I can say this. I feel like I don't even think about the speech as much as I used to. I think about it every day, like subconsciously, but it's not like this active, thing that I'm trying to avoid. I feel like, since I've accepted it and just, kind of owned it, I'm not I'm not as I feel like I'm not nervous to stutter. So when I stutter, it just, happens and I kind of move on. I don't like, beat myself up the way I used to. But then, compare that to the sexuality and even thinking about doing, this webinar, it's a big deal for me to be here and be, completely open. Like this is probably the most open I've ever been about myself in my entire life, like both sides of me that I've kind of hid for so many years. So uh it's a big deal. Um I'm gonna switch up our topic a little bit for the last 10 or so minutes before we'll get into audience Q&A. How how has your experience been? I'll start with Darcy. Do you feel like, because you've always been open about who you are, you've obviously had a unique perspective and on teams. Do you feel like that's played well for your career? Like how has that impacted your career progressing progression, having that unique perspective or diverse perspective?
It's an interesting question. I mean, being being out, I feel like it was generally sort of just a neutral thing in my professional life. Um, I again, I had I had the fortune of I've always lived in places where there was not a huge social cost to being out. And in my jobs, there were generally other people who were out as well. So I think it just was something that was just sort of not, it just sort of a non-issue. Um, Stuttering was, in some ways, I think, more of an issue for me. Um, again, it was never something that was like explicitly talked about, but I think it like there was a lot going on for me, like in law school, before I never ended up practicing law. I mean, I did very well in law school, but but I never practiced, and I there were ways in which I felt like I held myself back from opportunities. Like it never affected my grades. I was always like when I had issues with classes that were more Socratic method or anything like that. I always sort of found a way to deal with that. Um, but I think it inhibited me in terms of um, opportunities I sought out or didn't seek out. And some of that was stuff that had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with sexuality or stuttering or anything. It was just sort of some crazy life circumstances in my 20s. Um, but but there were definitely ways in which I held myself back, um, and which I've as I've gotten involved in the Syrian community, I know it's a pretty common phenomenon of I found interviews difficult, I found making phone calls difficult, and so sometimes um, I would avoid I would definitely avoid um, those types of uncomfortable situations. Um, Although then when I was out in the professional world, like one thing, I mean, this was something in college and in the professional world, I realized like I could do public speaking just fine. So like I didn't necessarily have you know, like I taught for a while and I was totally fine as a teacher. Um, but um, But I think the underlying discomfort, it's just always been something that's held me back a little bit. So I guess that's, I'm not sure how explicitly I've answered the question, but that's what that's what's come up for me as in trying to answer.
No, and that's okay. I think that's what's so enjoyable about this format. It's just very open, and we don't have to stay on one particular question. So I appreciate you sharing that extra extra experience from your life. Sarah, I'm gonna go over to you. Do you feel like, now that you're more comfortable with who you are at work, do you feel like your perspective is valued more than maybe somebody else, or like how is your openness at work? How, like, has it given you any advantages at work, presenting your unique perspective?
Yeah. I'm not sure if me being more open about my queerness, I don't know if that's necessarily benefited me in any way. I mean, it certainly like doesn't hurt at all. I don't know if it's benefited me, but definitely coming out as a person who stutters, that has definitely benefited me. For work currently, I lead volunteering events, and sometimes it can be up to like 100 volunteers. And at the beginning of every event, I have to do a whole speech and tell everybody what they're doing. And then during the event, I have to kind of facilitate that. And I would say typically at the beginning of each event that I do, I like to say, hey, I'm a person who stutters, and if that comes up, don't worry, everything's totally fine. And I think that has benefited me in a way where I'm then less focused on me talking, and I'm able to now focus on the actual event and like content of what I am giving or presenting, which is nice. And then also too, I feel like it just kind of like opens up this, like it just like opens up the room for like people to then, be more comfortable with who they are and to just like express more vulnerability, which is pretty great and like awesome that that's kind of been a result of me being open about my stutter. Yeah, sorry, my brain kind of went blank just now, but yeah, I will leave it at that for now.
No problem. And yeah, I think what you said is so true. I think it goes back to like advertising, right? It gives you more comfort and just putting it all out there, and like you said, you almost don't focus on it as much once you just get it out there. Whether it's new colleagues, existing colleagues, whatever, volunteers, whatever sort of situation you're in. I think like owning that part of yourself and just putting it out there is, although it's scary, it's really easier. Makes you comfortable, and then they're, like you said, they're more comfortable to share. So I've had similar experiences. I'm just being conscious of time. I know we have to wrap up in a few minutes, so we can go over to Q&A. I'm gonna go over to you, Corey, on our last talking point. How can allies show support.
So, okay, yes, how can allies show support? Well, okay, yeah, so at work, um, yeah, so at work specifically, I noticed that, yes, that since I've been more open, like about my stutter, people people are like are more helpful, yeah, especially during meetings where previously I felt felt like I was being talked over pretty often, but yeah, but I think that since I've been more open, people have been like have been coming back to me like during meetings, yeah, and so for example saying, oh, Corey had this good point earlier, let's hear more hear more uh, about that. Yeah, so um, I'm very lucky to have this new boss, like who's like who like who like like who really understands my stuttering, and yeah, and so she often senses when I want to say something, yeah, so she's willing to step in there, yeah, and and actually put the spotlight on me, to speak. Whereas previously, when I was less open, I would be fine with people just just talking over me, and then yeah, and afterward being kind of angry at myself, yeah, like for not voicing something that I should have done. Um, like yes, that's I mean, yeah, yeah. So I assume that you were mostly talking about the workplace.
Yeah, mostly. I mean, it could be in general. I think, from my point of view, just to close out the commentary part, I think the best way allies can show support is to ask questions and listen. Like, yeah, like it would be great with this webinar if I could have invited my entire team, right? Or like I don't know, some of my friends, for example. Like I think it's just feeling supported, and like our unique perspectives are being listened to, I think is a really good start. I want to thank you all so much for sharing your um experiences. I just want to make sure that we have enough time to answer um any uh any questions from the audience. So if since we have a relatively smaller group, if anybody would like to come off mute and ask any questions to myself or any of or any of our panelists, that would be fine.
So we have a question in the chat. Oh, so you can go ahead, Leah. I was just going to
Oh yeah, okay.
tell them about your question, but you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. Can you hear my voice?
We can't hear you. Are you able to speak a
Okay.
little bit?
Can you hear my voice now?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Alia and I'm from Indonesia. I'm a person who stutters, and my question would be, how can I disclose my stutter in a work environment that does not support it, especially knowing that the stuttering awareness in Indonesia is very, very low. And moreover, it has it it's it hasn't been included as a disability here. So the government hasn't really put attention to this stuttering issues. So it's been a very significant dilemma in here. And also and as a developing country, Indonesia prioritize issues like the economy more, hence making stuttering and other disability issues a lesser known concern. So does any of you have any input on this case? Maybe. Thank you so much.
Does anybody on the panel want to answer the question? Any thoughts?
You know, obviously it's a very, I'm just going to throw a couple thoughts out there. I mean, obviously it's a very, it's a complicated question. And, it's obviously, I don't know that any of us have the expertise to really give you the advice I think we'd like to have the expertise to give you. But I will say, just one perspective I have on that is because awareness is not there, and because institutional support is not necessarily there. I mean, it's obviously it's a huge challenge, and so probably the most power you have in terms of disclosure is is on a more individual level, is to talk, is to try to in a very basic way to try to educate like a direct supervisor or somebody, just to be able to just say, hey, you know um, I stutter. This is what stuttering is. um, it does not affect my ability to work or to perform or to communicate in meaningful ways. And so I guess what I ask of you is, if you hear me having a hard time, if you hear me having difficulty trying to speak, it doesn't mean I'm nervous. It doesn't mean I don't know what I'm doing. It's just the way my brain processes speech. And I promise you, if there's a bigger problem, I'll let you know. But mostly, just if this is what you're hearing, it's just a stutter. It's not anything to be concerned about, or to hopefully be distracted by. Like, just anything sort of personal that you can do to create an ally, and to find the support that could help. I'm not sure how helpful that is, but it seems like that's the most power that you have.
Great. Thank you so much for your feedback, Dorsey. That's useful. I was going to say something similar to that. Any way to create awareness that's comfortable for you is, you're still going to make an impact, and you're still going to make yourself, feel more comfortable. So, even though you're in a challenging environment, I could never understand. And like Dorsey said, I don't feel like I'm personally placed to, really help you answer that question from my own experiences. I still feel like you can make a difference within your own network, by just being honest and open and sharing your experiences. Are there any other questions? Anything else in the chat, Annabelle? Or does anybody want to come off mute and ask us any additional questions? And it's completely fine if there's no additional questions. So if there's no more questions, I want to thank you all, so much for joining. A big shout out to our panelists, Corey, Darcy, and Sarah. I've really enjoyed getting to know you better, and thank you for participating. shout out to Pam and Annabelle from our board for helping me moderate, and thank you so much to all of our participants for joining us. I just want to plug in a few NSA resources. So if you go to our website at westutter.org, you can find our career resources. We have mock interviews that we do with people. We have webinars like these where we focus on different topics, and you could follow us on LinkedIn for more updates. The other brand new thing that we're actually starting tonight is we want to better understand what our participant feedback is for these webinars. What topics you would like to see in the future, what you like, what you think we could improve on. So I would ask you all, and greatly appreciate if you all, including our panelists, as soon as we end the webinar, you'll see within Zoom, automatically you'll get a Zoom survey that will be sent to us, and we can fine tune and improve our webinar moving forward. So I'll thank you in advance for giving your feedback, and thank you all, and enjoy the rest of Pride Month and your night. Bye, everyone.
Thank
Good
you,
night. Thanks so
everyone.
much.
Good to be here with you all.